Hello, and welcome to Enlightened Empaths, your community for the spiritually awakened, where we discuss, explore, and connect with fellow empaths, healers, intuitives, and seekers. Hello, empaths. We hope your week is off to a great start. How are you doing this week?
I'm okay. I'm glad we're past the retrogrades and the first of the year and the holidays, and it's time for a new beginning and some fresh energy. So I'm really looking forward to 2025 and getting in a new direction.
Me too. I completely agree. I'm recording from a different location. I'm kind of hiding away in my house because they're doing some work on my home. So if there's any background noise, I apologize to anyone's ears, but hopefully we'll be good to go.
Yes.
So this week we wanted to share with you just some articles we saw in the news that we read and thought, I think our listeners would really enjoy this because it definitely made us go, I never looked at it that way. The first one was published on HuffPost, and it's called 7 Positive Traits That Are Secretly Anxiety in Disguise. So as you listen along with us, see if you can identify with any of these traits. I know I could, Denise. How about you?
Very much so. And what I've noticed over the last couple of years, maybe it's a post-pandemic thing, maybe it's not, that even people who generally weren't affected by anxiety or anxiety type issues have had that in their lives. So I think this is really timely to say, is it anxiety or is it a hidden aspect of it? Especially as empathic people, I think that it's becoming even more paramount.
I do too. And I think empaths are really good at hiding their anxiety from themselves.
We get gold stars on that one.
We do. All right. Here's the first trait of the 7 positive traits that are secretly anxiety in disguise: staying calm in a crisis. So the article says a soothing voice and a calm demeanor can be beneficial in crisis situations, like when a kid gets hurt or there's a PR issue at work. The concern lies in what may have contributed to the person responding that way. Amelia Kelly, a trauma-informed researcher and therapist, says those who are more used to the stress of anxiety tend to react to crisis and extreme stress more effectively because their brains are acclimated to these high stress states. So that's interesting, isn't it? It's as though the brain is like, oh yeah, we know what this drama, high impact crisis situation feels like. We got this, no big deal.
Right. It feels familiar.
Right, exactly. But something to be mindful with this and a coping skill to adopt is that all bodies will hit a point of burnout. And with someone with high anxiety, they may not realize there's an issue until they're experiencing extreme reactions and even medical issues and inflammation. She recommends giving yourself breaks, especially after highly stressful moments, instead of trying to power through without breaking a sweat.
I think a really important part of this is, are you always in crisis mode? Are you always the one staying calm in a crisis mode? So when I first read through this, I was thinking about that the boys used to joke and say, uh-oh, it's her special ed voice. And I would get this very calm, very even tone. And that was, I worked with a lot of people who had behavior challenges. So that made sense. I had that voice. But also if something extreme happens, I go right into that same mode. But I think it's a learned behavior, don't you?
I totally do. I'll tell you words you never want to hear me say. I'm fine.
Oh, yes, same.
Yeah. But when I say I'm fine, I'm not fine. And that message she talks about of powering through without breaking a sweat. How many times have you said, just let me get through this holiday season? Just let me get through this big work deadline. Just let me get through. And you just push and push and push through. And then you get the flu or your back goes out or you get a migraine and you're like, what the hell happened?
Well, it's so funny because, not funny, haha, but I was having this conversation with a dear friend and saying, I need to stop using that expression of I'll just get through it.
Yeah.
Because that's no way to live.
No.
That's not why we're here. But I think constant pressure or responsibilities or expectations, we can fall into that. And if it is masking anxiety, then that's something to really look at. Or is it that our circumstances are a catalyst for that anxiety? And we need to look at maybe making some changes in our lives.
Exactly. Now, the second one is aiming for perfection. Turning in A+ work will certainly make your boss happy, but its roots might not be so positive. If you notice you're hyper aware of your mistakes, have lofty goals, or even procrastinate, you might be a perfectionist. Basically, perfectionism can serve as a defense mechanism when you're anxious about failing or not being good enough. People who struggle with anxiety may feel that anything less than perfect will lead to judgment or negative consequences, so they set impossibly high standards for themselves. Beneath the drive for flawlessness is often a deep fear of making mistakes and the consequences that come with them. While that may be something to work on, it's important to validate that in today's world, it's a totally fair reaction. You may feel like you have to produce perfect work to make money, keep your job, and survive in this economy. You may also love the dopamine rush that comes when people inevitably compliment your work. To remedy this, strive for good enough. Celebrate progress over perfection and practice self compassion. Embrace the idea that mistakes are opportunities for learning and growth, not signs of failure.
That's a hard one for a lot of people, don't you think? As
Oh,
far
yeah.
as, and we've talked about this a lot of different times, privately or on the show. Holding us, it's not quite right. It's not quite done. I just need to redo it one more time. And what's popping into my head right now is when you wrote your first book and you wrote it and then you had to edit and then you edited it again. It wasn't perfectionism. It was honing your skill. It was making it better. But when you become immobilized with unable to produce anything out of fear that it's not good enough, or I don't have quality video equipment, so I can't do a live, or whatever it might be. I think that that's when it's linked with anxiety.
Yeah, I do too. And just needing to always just be the best that you can be. That's hard when good enough is fine. How many times have I said to my kids as they were heading into finals this year, C's get degrees?
Well,
Isn't that great motherly advice?
no, it really is, because it takes the pressure off of them. And it's not how many people look at your grade point average when you apply for a job. I don't, maybe they do for certain professions. I'm thinking of two people in my life that are highly, highly, highly creative, just off the chain. They see things that other people don't see. They see nuance, they see shadow, they see color, they see the subtle differences that a lot of people that aren't creative or in that profession wouldn't see. So is that a perfectionism trait, or is it the way that they're wired that even though we can't see it, they can see that it's not enough? It's a
I
weird
think
one.
it is a weird one, and I completely agree with you. One of my daughters, well, I think they're all creative, but one is exactly like you were just saying. Like, she just sees the world in a beautiful, magical, different way than most people do. And she'll do this beautiful, beautiful portrait and then like rip it up because she sees something in it that is not perfectly symmetrical. And I'm like, no, 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 that was beautiful. And so we think in that case it's a tricky balance, because you do always want to try your best. You don't want to put your name on something that's good enough. I get that. But I think it's a balance, you know? It's fine to have one or two or three projects that you really, really want to be the best example of your work. But on a day to day, I think we need to celebrate good enough.
Right. And the whole thing of that eye for detail or that perfectionism, I was watching my son paint something one time and he said, I've got to start this over. And I said, what? And I literally went and got a magnifying glass trying to find what the hell he was talking about because I couldn't see it. But in his mind, he could see it. And I think that's what you're saying about your daughter is if it's not good enough for her, it's going to cause more anxiety, but it can also be very limiting with putting yourself out there and being vulnerable enough to let people see what you're really capable of doing.
Yeah, that's why it's a balance.
Right.
And I think you have to look at what you were taught about good enough versus perfection. You know, because some of us were raised in homes where perfectionism was expected. I think I've told this story before, but one time, Denise, when wallpaper was a thing, my mom decided to have one huge wall wallpapered in bookshelf paper.
Okay.
And it looked beautiful. It looked like a wall of books. And she sat there every night staring at that, going, something's off, something's off. I can't find it, but something's off. She found one row of the wallpaper books that was misaligned and had them take it all down and redo it.
It was driving her nutty.
It was driving her nutty.
Okay.
Can
But
you
again, that
imagine?
eye for detail, that
Yeah.
it's not quite right. And that's a heavy cross to bear. But I
Oh,
think we're
yeah.
talking about two different things of if you have that eye and that you're the people who can walk into a room and say, oh, if you put a pop of color over there, it's going to change the
That's a
whole
gift.
energy of the room. Right. That's different than it's not good enough or I'm not good enough.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I think we have to be aware of when we're veering into that self-identifying with good enough versus I need to do more and be more.
Or also to consider when people make comments about work that we've done or something we're producing that causes us to doubt that it's good enough. I feel like I'm at the dentist.
I know. I'm sorry. Can you do the next
Oh,
one?
yeah. So another thing that can be masked as anxiety is overachieving. And it's similar to the perfectionism. So you might overachieve to fight anxious, nagging thoughts that you aren't or will never be enough. If you're the type to say yes to everything, volunteer to help others, or stay at work late, you might be covering up high functioning anxiety. And I think that many, many empaths have this trait. They do the extra. They take care of doing more. They volunteer to do the things that other people don't want to do. A lot of times during readings, I'll get a visual of, and I'll be talking with someone that's highly empathic. And in my mind's eye, I'll see this desk or table just loaded, loaded, loaded with more and more stuff being piled on top of it. And that's always my sign for spirit that whatever their work environment is, someone says, oh, don't mind. So-and-so doesn't mind doing that. You don't mind, do you? And they get more and more piled on top of them. And I think that that could cause the anxiety. But if you already have the anxiety and you're offering to do the extra to begin with, it's a double whammy.
It is. And I think it's a way for people to not focus on what's really going on inside.
Right. Right. But many of these feel like tendencies. I can relate to every damn one of these so far, and not in a limiting way of never being able to function or produce or do that, but it's always on the back burner. And I'm thinking, is it a learned behavior? Some people come with more of a propensity to be anxious or nervous or high strung or whatever it might be. But I think a lot of this as empaths comes back to why we're hypervigilant about everything.
I agree.
Another thing to keep in mind, if you have that feeling of having to stay on top of everything, perhaps at the intersection of perfectionism and overachieving, we have overfunctioning. And being on top of everything at all times can make someone look like they have everything together and they're a high achiever, but can also be a sign that someone fears losing control and feels the need to hypermanage their life. And this can lead to a host of other problems such as stress, health concerns, issues with anger management and emotional regulation, overcommitment, and commitments falling through the cracks, unhealthy narratives about perfectionism, difficulty asking for help. Learning to delegate and ask for help is the key remedy for this type of anxiety. If you've been a single mom, if you've been the person who has had to keep everything together, if you've been the caretaker, or you have a spouse or someone in your family that you're constantly picking up the slack for because of their health or their ability to take care of things at this time in their life, you step up, you do what you have to do. But I think it can become a way of life, that hypervigilance and always having to stay on. You're always waiting for the shoe to drop, always waiting for a trap door. Did I miss anything? And that's a huge, huge pressure to put on yourself.
Totally. And feeling the need to always be in charge. I think it's so important that we let go of that. But you're right. I mean, if you were the one where everything landed on you and your shoulders, then it becomes your go-to to stay on top of everything.
Well,
But learning to delegate and ask for help, I think is the key here. And that's hard. I'm still learning that. I'm doing much, much better at it.
and I wish I had known this early in my life when I was spinning more plates than I am now. is that it's okay to let some of those plates drop. It's okay if your house isn't always spotless, or you do the best you can. You
Yeah.
really do. And I think sometimes when it's more and more and more, many people may not have support. They may not have help. They may not have, say, oh, I'm going to drop the kids off at my parents', or I'm going to have a neighbor pop in. You have to prioritize how to get through it. And that sounds like a cop out, but it's not. It's taking care of yourself. This is a hard one.
A very hard one. Okay, so the next one on our list is people pleasing. Do you feel anxious at the idea of making someone unhappy by not doing what they want? Maybe you push your preferences to the side and say yes to everything to avoid conflict. People pleasers go out of their way to make others happy, even at the expense of their own needs, because they fear that saying no or disappointing others will result in disapproval, loss of relationships, or other negative outcomes. This can be a manifestation of social anxiety and fear of not being accepted. To work on this, the experts recommend gradually experimenting with small instances of assertiveness until you notice that relationships actually improve when you are honest about your own needs. And I found, Denise, that when you stop being a people pleaser, you might lose some friends, but you know what? They weren't actually friends.
Right.
So when you start to really own who you are and set those healthy boundaries and speak up for yourself, the people that remain are the ones who truly love and care for you.
I spoke with someone recently who has a strong metaphysical practice, very, very good at what she does. She's done it for a long, long time, and was doing a reading for her, and it came through that she said, I did the best thing I ever could have done for myself in this past year is I learned to say no. And she said, I've never been able to do that. I've never been able to set those boundaries. She said, Denise, it's changed my life. But she brought up exactly what you just said. She said, I've lost some people in the process, but I have such a sense of freedom and a sense of self that it was well worth it.
Wow. See, that's powerful.
It is. And I again, learned behavior, the way we're wired, not wanting to hurt anyone's feelings. It's all of those things. And this is a hard one. We don't want to disappoint anyone. We don't, I mean, personally, I go out of my way not to hurt anyone. It's not always people pleasing. It's that empathy
You
of
just don't
not,
want to let them down.
right, right, or hurt their feelings, or if you've ever been decimated by someone emotionally, I think it's always on the back of your mind not to do that to someone else.
Right, exactly. And it feels good to help others.
It does.
So again, I think we're back to balance, just like it feels good to achieve something or put your best work forward. You just can't get to that place where it's overtaking the balance and the groundedness of your life.
Right. And a key thing to consider may be you do something for someone else, but do you feel resentful? Do you feel angry? Do you feel like, oh, son of a bitch, why can't they do this for themselves? That might be a reason that you've tipped over into out of balance and into more of an anxiety producing state than wanting to do it out of kindness and love and support.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's important to just continually check in with yourself. Do I want to do this? Why do I want to do this? What are my motivations for doing this? And to look at your relationships and see, are they equal? Is this a two-way street?
And I think it's important to add in there when you first start doing this level of work, you might double guess the shit out of yourself for a while. Uh-oh, did I say the wrong thing? Did I do the wrong thing? Because you don't know how to do it. It's you're trying to rewire some pathways and figure out new behaviors. It's a learning curve.
It really is. That's such a great point. None of this is going to feel easy in the beginning.
Right. Or another thing that can, and this fits for all of us as empaths, if you have really high levels of empathy and you can understand and share someone else's feelings, it's a beautiful thing. It's an important part of our relationships. It's just who we are. That's the bottom line. At the same time, it can have some cons, especially at the extreme levels. It can contribute to the people pleasing and feeling hopeless. But it can also, if you are able to switch it out and concentrate on meditation, self-compassion, taking news breaks, you can start to realize you can regulate your empathy a little bit. It's why we don't want to go into big crowded places wide open, sucking everything up like a sponge.
Right, right. You have to really monitor your own emotions and that's why I love that sitting in the power meditation, because it really helps you to become aware of your own emotions. But I've had friends like this, where if another friend is in crisis, there's a friend in our group who will set up the meal train, who will drop by and clean their house, who will pick up their kids from school, who will text them. Like, it's like she takes it on as her own,
Yeah.
and it's lovely, but it's a little bit much.
Well, I have some certain people in my life that if they're having physical discomfort, I'll feel it in my body. Like dear friends, my children, if they're I was speaking with someone earlier today and I said, "Are you having some trouble breathing?" And the person said, "Yeah," because I all of a sudden I couldn't catch my breath. And I knew it wasn't mine, but it's a dear enough person in my life that I could just ask. But if you're feeling things physically, pay attention to, is this mine or am I picking up the energy of what someone else is going through? Because highly empathic people, your body is going to often, I shouldn't say it always does, but often it will tune into what someone else may be feeling.
Yeah, and that's important because you don't want to have to carry that.
No.
Send the healing energy, but don't take the hit yourself.
Oh, good way to put it.
And then the next one is called hyper responsibility. If you feel the urge to be in charge of everything so it gets done and gets done right, you might be hyper responsible. Maybe you're the mom friend when you and your friends go out, or you feel like everyone's well being is on your shoulders, or you hate having to rely on others during group projects. You may be taking hyper responsibility to the next level if this resonates with you. While this can feel helpful, it can also put undue stress on you. Taking on too much responsibility can come from a need to feel in control of uncertain situations or to prevent potential problems. This may stem from anxiety about the future or a fear of being blamed if things go wrong. These individuals may take on tasks that aren't theirs, believing it will prevent negative outcomes. The best way to work on this is to delegate and trust others to manage their own responsibilities. Challenge the thought patterns driving the need to over control by considering the actual likelihood of worst case scenarios happening. The main takeaway here: take care of yourself in these anxiety ridden moments. Setting boundaries and giving yourself compassion. Your mind and body deserve it.
The very first thing that comes to mind with this is if you have been involved in any kind of a codependent relationship, often you've had to be that person that took control or hyper responsibility. And it's one of the affirmations that I write every day is to allow rather than control. Because I think that sometimes you go into that mode to survive or to keep things going, but it becomes a behavior. And learning to allow and having more flow in your life is going to make it a lot easier.
Oh, yeah. I remember not too long ago when I was taking care of the kids and my ailing parents. Remember, I would tell you, like, I think I've forgotten how to slow down.
Yes.
Like, I really was like, I don't think I know how to slow down anymore because I was just always, the minute I'd get one settled, I'd, you know, do meal prepping for my mom, and then I'd go visit my dad at the nursing home, and then I'd have to take one kid to the dentist, and it was just a lot. And I lost that sense of balance and centeredness for a little while there, and I had to schedule it in.
And that's so important. And it doesn't necessarily mean, oh, spa day. It can mean that you take a few extra minutes in the morning with your coffee, or you take the long way to, or this is so foolish, but sit in a parking lot and just be quiet for a minute. It doesn't have to be a huge deal, but you have to do things to take care of yourself when you're taking care of absolutely everything else in your life.
Well, and I think it's important to be honest about where you are and understand that it's a busy season. Like, that's one of the reasons I started working out so much more, was I had a hard time slowing down because I was always going between my kids, my mom's house, my dad in the nursing home. I had a hard time slowing down. And if I did schedule in time, like, to me, what always relaxes me even more than meditation is just sitting and reading a book. But I couldn't even slow down to do that. So I went to the gym because it was something I could do just for me. I could listen to my podcast while I was lifting weights. I could watch a show while I was on the elliptical. But it was also healthy, and it also kept me moving and going, which is how my body was moving and going. My mind was.
Which is a great stress reliever as well.
Yeah. And so I think for me anyway, it's always been important just to be really honest. Like, Samantha, are you really going to sit and meditate for 20 minutes today when your to-do list is 3 pages long? No.
Right.
But are you going to carve out time to go hike up the Stairmaster thing? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And to also understand that it's not your life. I think if you're in a high stressful situation, I always say to myself, this is a chapter in my book, not my book, or this is a season in my life, not my life.
And unlearning the hyper responsibility. Remember, quite a while back, we did a show on I feel guilty when I relax.
Yeah.
Because you get in that mode, that mindset that it's difficult, if not impossible, to relax, to slow down, because it feels guilty. It feels like you've conditioned yourself and your responses to always be on, to always be taking care of something. So again, please be gentle with yourself when you relearn the behaviors of how to relax a little bit, because it's not easy at all.
At all. All right. So that was from our HuffPost article called 7 Positive Traits That Are Secretly Anxiety in Disguise. So if you want to read that on the internet, just search up that title. Our next one is even more positive, right, Denise?
It ties in, though. It does tie in.
This one is from Psychology Today, and it's titled, Is Your Job Killing You?
Oh,
But
I think this is relevant for a lot of people right now.
I do too. I think it's very relevant, and I think people need to consider how much are you giving to your job? How much is your job taking from you? So the article says your calendar is chaos. Back-to-back meetings, urgent requests, last-minute invites are taking over your day. You don't own your time. Your job does. For many, this fast-paced life feels like success. People need you. You're important. The pressure pushes you to perform. Isn't this what winning looks like? Not quite. Overworking is the invisible enemy. When work demands pile up, your body becomes a dumping ground for stress. Late night binges, one more drink, another scroll through Instagram, all might feel like a relief, but they are symptoms of a deeper problem, a culture of overwork that normalizes striving, competing, bootstrapping, and hustling to feel like you are enough. The real question is, how do you stop this cycle of sacrificing your health, happiness, and sense of self in the name of work? That's such an important question, especially for those of us in America. You know, I feel like in Europe they have a better sense of this. Like, what's their average vacation? Isn't it like 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
I'm not sure, but I know it's longer than what is the norm in this country.
Yeah. I remember my first job out of school. I think I got 5 days off a year. And you
Yeah.
had to like work, like, and every year you'd get one more day at it,
Right.
you know? And I was like, what is this nonsense?
And some companies you earn hours each day you work. Oh, I got another 3 hours of vacation comp time, or I'm building it up, and they'll get vacation time, but then you'll work for comp time, and it's not, I think there's a very fine line in this of most of us do need to do something to support ourselves. And we just have to make sure that we learn how to not make it our entire lives.
Which is hard when a lot of companies expect that.
Right.
Especially, I think a lot about people and their work schedule before computers and cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I have such vivid memories We would pick up my dad at the train station on a Friday at like 6:30, and he'd go, let's swing by the bank, and he would have to think about what we were doing that weekend and what kind of money he needed for the weekend, because like nobody really used credit cards back then. Oh my
Right.
God, that's making me sound ancient. It wasn't that long ago. Once he got home, work never contacted him. There was no email to check. There was no text coming in. He
Right.
had the weekend. And then Monday came and he went back to work. But at least they had the weekend. Now, I don't feel that people have that.
No,
Coworkers text over the weekends, bosses text you late at night, emails are pinging in. You know, it happens all the time.
there's a friend that works for a high level corporation, and the expectation is this needs to be done, then I guess you're working all weekend. Or if there a text comes in or an email comes in at 10 o'clock at night and it's not answered by them, why didn't you answer that email? Well, it was 10 o'clock at night. It doesn't matter. It needs to be answered. That pressure, and it's a very, very high level job in a high level profession, but it's still there's no freedom. There's no, as you just mentioned, there's no on off switch
No.
of this is work, this is my life. And even in our world, which we do have a little more freedom and autonomy than many people do with the way we can choose how we schedule, but I was writing about this the other day of I need to just set on my calendar, this is when I answer emails, not all during the day or whenever I get a minute checking my email. Set some time. I'm going to answer emails. If I don't get to it, then it waits until the next time that I answer emails, because we have to take care of ourselves.
We really do. And it doesn't have to be a high powered job. I have a friend who has a very ordinary, average job. She works from home. She likes it fine. But she had like a little Christmas get together, and her office is like right off her living room. And we're all just sitting around. And it's like 10 o'clock at night. And we hear this ding, ding, ding. And she's like, oh, hold on. That's my boss. He gets these like random ideas in the middle of the night and just
Yeah.
emails them to me.
Yeah. And the expectation is answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I just think that's so hard. So the article continues that we need to find a better off switch. Overwork wires your nervous system to treat deadlines and demands as threats, keeping it on high alert. I never really thought about that your nervous system looks at deadlines as a high alert.
Right.
Even after the workday ends, your body doesn't know that it's safe to relax. Without an intentional all clear signal, you'll default to quick fixes like alcohol, weed, or dopamine heavy distractions to force quit your stress. Dopamine heavy distractions, what does that mean?
Anything that's going to shut it off or that's going to give you
Okay.
that little rush. Yeah.
You might think, I don't have time to exercise or do mindful breathing, but the irony is that these small resets make you more productive. Studies show that chronic workload, having too much to do, skipping lunch breaks, and checking work emails during leisure time is linked to both mental and physical exhaustion and sleep disturbances. You need an arsenal of relaxing behaviors that don't have negative long-term consequences for your body. In other words, you need a better off switch to counter the vigilance of nonstop work. You know, I remember for a long time, Denise, I tried really hard not to have my work email as an app on my cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember why I put it on there. But I remember the person who does like my website, she was like, you have to have it on your phone. And I was like, no, I don't. If I have it on my phone, I'm going to check my work email all the time.
Right.
And I was right, because I still do that. I'll be like, oh no, what's coming in now? What do I need to answer? Who do I need to respond to? We have all these things coming at us all the time. And I just feel like before there was a way to keep them at bay,
Right.
before cell phones, before the internet, but even after cell phones, I didn't have to check my work email unless I was sitting in front of my computer. Now it's just on your phone.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people expect immediate response.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Especially if it's an email, I don't feel that urgency, but if someone texts me, I do.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that way?
I do. And if someone texts and my phone is on mode and I'm working or I'm on a call with someone and I don't see it ping when I come back, then I'm not ignoring you. I just didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Or I read it real quick and then forgot to respond because something else popped in and then it comes back to feeling bad and being a people pleaser.
Yes, it does. And I try to explain, like, I try not to have my cell phone with me a lot. Like if I'm at home and I know where all my girls are, I don't look at my cell phone for a long time.
Yeah.
I try to take breaks. I'm also in a couple of group chats that I just kind of silence. And I keep my phone on silence most of the time anyway. And so I will legitimately miss text. And I have a couple of friends, I know they think I'm lying
Mm-hmm.
when I say I didn't see your text, but I really didn't. But they think because they sit with their phone, surgically attached to their hand, that everyone else does.
Taking a break from the phone, I've gotten in the habit of leaving it in another room. This is another conditioning aspect. When I take a walk by myself in areas where there aren't a lot of people, I always have my phone with it because it's like, well, what if I fall or get hurt or I need help? Then I need to be able to get in touch with someone. Well, I walked for a hell of a lot of years without, if you fall down, you get up and you find a way to get back to where you started. That we're conditioned to need that immediacy of being able to get in touch with people. Or, oh, God forbid, I might need to take a picture or something. When did that become such a thing?
I don't know. I'm the opposite. I forget to take photos all the time. And you know what? If people are after you like that, just take your phone, but put it on airplane mode.
Well, and I was looking, someone sent something recently and they said, oh, put your last 5 pictures. And I looked at my last one and there's a tree and there's a bug and oh, look, there's the river. It was just, nobody gives a rat's ass about that.
That's so funny. I mean, we do need those picture takers. My sister is a picture taker. No matter where we are, we could be waiting in line at, I don't know, Walgreens, and she'd be like, let's take a selfie. And we always razz her about it. But at the end of the day, we are, you do need those people. We're grateful to
Mhm.
have those photos because I never think at a holiday moment or a party to pause and say, everyone gather together for a photo. But she always does. And I am grateful for that. I'm just not that person.
Right.
So he says instead of relying on these unhealthy vices, take a 10-minute device-free walk. See, look, this author's all about leaving the phone at home too. To transition out of grind mode, skip the screen time at home, read a book or embrace the quiet, connect with a partner or friend, ask questions rather than conquer more tasks. And he says these might seem trivial, but they help your body complete the stress response cycle. Using healthy off switches to get our nervous system out of hyperproductive work mode breaks the cycle of waking up exhausted, hungover, and running uncaffeinated empty.
Oh, that's a good line, caffeinated empty.
Yeah, that is. I have to tell you, I remember when our old priest, he's since retired, but he was lovely and he always cracked us up. And for Lent one year, he gave up TV and he announced it at church, before um, Advent started. And he was like, I'm sorry, before Lent started. And he said, I'm going to, give up TV. And he said, this is going to be really hard for me because I live alone and I use the TV as like a companion.
Mm-hmm.
Every Sunday throughout Lent, we had to listen to the agonies he was going through without his television.
Yeah.
He had the hardest time. And it was actually like kind of comforting to know that, someone who is kind of, I don't know, trained to like meditate and pray would have a hard time without the TV. And every year when why do I keep saying that? Every year when Lent comes along, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give up TV for 40 days too. And I never do it.
Right.
I've given up caffeine. I've given up chocolate. I've given up Diet Coke, caffeine-free Diet Coke too. But I've never given up TV.
Wow. But you're right. For a lot of people that are alone or older, or it is companionship. It's a voice in the house. Or it could be, a way to shut it all out and zone.
Yeah, that's what I like it for. When you've had like a busy go day, to just stretch out on your couch and put on something simple and mindless and interesting. I think it's a great way to relax and unwind. But he's saying you need to just take a break from screen time, once in a while, and notice the differences. So, I don't know, Lent's coming up. Maybe I'll think about that. Do you think I'll do it?
You might. I mean, but what would you fill in the time with? Would you read? Would you?
I would read. I would journal. I would write. Yeah, I mean, I would definitely, actually, knowing me, I would probably like draw or knit and listen to my podcast,
Oh, see, that's a
which is
nice.
kind
Yeah,
of the same as watching TV, don't you think?
it's
No?
similar. Well, yes and no. It's a different. I guess we're getting into. Um,
Semantics.
yeah.
Okay, he also says address the culture, not just the symptoms. And I thought this was such an important line. Overwork isn't just personal, it's cultural.
Oh,
Workplaces reward late night emails. Society glorifies hustle. Success ties worth to productivity. The data are clear. Workplace environments that emphasize overwork, such as expecting availability 24/7, increase stress and cause health related problems. When success is measured by busyness, slowing down or unplugging may seem like a failure or the threat of a poor performance review. You might think, I can't set boundaries without risking my career. That fear is valid, especially in high pressure environments. But without change, the grind doesn't just hurt your health, it hurts your work. If you don't challenge these systems, they only grow stronger. Studies show that boundaries increase focus, creativity, and long term productivity. So block focus time on your calendar, frame it as a way to deliver better results. Turn off email notifications after work hours and explain to coworkers how this actually improves efficiency. Ooh, that might not go over well. Can you imagine? Gather around. I'd like to share with you all. If necessary, he says, have a candid conversation with your manager about workload and priorities. Frame it as protecting your ability to perform sustainably. I don't know. I've been in some work environments where that conversation would not have gone over well.
no, no. Or because what are the is there going to be retribution? Are you going to be treated differently? Are you in fear of losing your job if you don't follow those? There's a lot to consider with this.
I remember when I found out I was pregnant with Victoria. I was the third woman in my office area that was pregnant. And I was terrified to go tell my boss that I was going to be having another baby and was going to be going on maternity leave. And do you know what she said to me?
What?
I would like to order tubal ligations for the whole department.
Oh.
Yep.
Oh,
And
wow.
Tori is 21 years old, and I still have not forgotten that.
No.
Never said congratulations, I'm so happy for you. She put her head in her hands and said, that's it, I'm ordering tubal ligations for the whole department.
And it wasn't said with humor.
No.
No.
No. No.
I hope you didn't stay there much longer.
No, I really didn't stay there much longer, nor did she, but that's a story for another time. So he says, you might be thinking, this isn't realistic in my workplace. True, you can't change the system overnight, but you can craft team norms, like no emails after 7 p.m., advocate for better workplace policies, or align with coworkers with similar values. Change often starts with someone saying, this isn't sustainable for me. What else is possible? I think sometimes if you're in a high-stress work environment too, you might just ask, is this the right work environment for me? And I'm not saying, everyone, go quit your jobs, but I'm saying start opening yourself up to the possibility of something different.
Right.
You know?
And
I think that's important.
And if it's something that you got a degree in, or you're trained in, or you have a level of experience and expertise and you're really good at it, and you're used to a certain quality of life, but you know that it's slowly eroding your health and wellness, that's a difficult decision. It was very key in why I chose to leave teaching. Is it wasn't the kids. We'll just leave it at that. But it wasn't a positive. I've thought about that a lot over the last several years. My health and wellness would not be what it is now if I had stayed in that environment. So you have to,
Yeah.
and I had the degrees and the background and all of those things behind it. But at some point you have to decide if it's worth it.
I had a friend who was really overworked in her job, and it was really contributing to a lot of stress and anxiety. And she kept saying, I go to work in the dark, I come home in the dark. Like in the winter and stuff, how hard that is. And she kept going to her boss and asking for a different work-life balance. And basically he would just give her more work. And it got to the point where she just started looking for more jobs. And she finally found a new job, but it just wasn't really what she wanted, but it was better. And so she told the boss, and he was like, we can't lose you. What can we do to keep you? And she set her demands, and he was like, okay. And she got it. So sometimes you have to initiate the change yourself and create different outlooks and possibilities for yourself. He says also change your core identity that's easy, right, Denise? Just change your core identity. For many, overwork isn't just a habit, it's who they are. Hustling and striving often start early, driven by a fear of not being enough or having enough. That's true. I read this fascinating article about like some of our earliest billionaires, like the robber barons, and they all had a difficult father, like a father who pushed them, either an abandoning father or a father who pushed them. And it was really interesting to look at what drives people to success. And there's usually that subconscious message they received as a child that says, you're not good enough.
Or if you grew up in an environment where it was survival, or you were working class, or there was never enough. And when I did the class last fall on the ancestral healing, it was fascinating to hear how many people were working through old things that their ancestors had. Were they in the Depression? Were they ostracized from their homeland? And that had been passed down and passed down and passed down. So even if you can't identify it in this lifetime of why do I strive to work, it could be something that genetically you've inherited, and you can look at it that way as well.
Oh, 100%. I'm listening to Cher's memoir. I
Mm-hmm.
love Cher. Are you a fan of Cher?
Yeah, she's incredible.
I just think she's so cool. And she talks about how they grew up so, so poor. And so when she and Sonny started working together, they just worked all the time. They toured, they took a gig wherever they could. They'd play in people's living rooms, they'd play anywhere. And when they started making money, she would buy two of everything in case they lost that money.
Yeah.
And she said how it just never really left her. So he says that over time, this drive to achieve becomes central to your identity. You're the one who takes on more, who delivers results, who's indispensable. But this identity can also become your cage. If you've only ever measured your worth through your work, you might not know how to operate differently. The thought of doing less feels like losing yourself. The solution isn't to abandon your drive, but to reframe it. How many times have you seen that with people when they retire, Denise? Like they've worked so hard their whole life and then they retire and it doesn't go well. Have you seen that?
More often than not.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like they don't know what to do with themselves without work because it has become their core identity. Instead of letting overwork define you, he says you should treat it as a tool you control. You can turn it up when needed, but you can also dial it down. Start by asking these questions. Who am I beyond my work? What do I value besides achievement? What fears drive my relentless ambition? How has this served me? How is it holding me back? When you build a fuller, more balanced identity, one that allows for hard work without sacrificing your health and happiness, you can create a life that sustains you rather than drains you. The path to freedom involves seeing that overwork feeds on the fear that if you stop, you will lose your edge or become irrelevant. It tells you there's no alternative, that your worth depends on output. The irony is that your grind is potentially sabotaging the very future you're chasing. Without your health, what good is career achievement or material success? And you might think he says, I'm not burnt out yet. I can keep going. Many high performers dismiss the messages they get from their bodies. Irritability, poor sleep, chronic reliance on uppers or downers to make it through the day all point to an impending crisis. Thankfully, this cycle isn't inevitable. Breaking free starts with small steps, cultivating better power down routines, setting boundaries at work, and rediscovering who you are beyond a workhorse. So I think that's all really important to think about, that your body might be telling you, heads up, you are heading to burnout. If you find that you can't sleep or you can't, and when they say poor sleep, they mean like having trouble falling asleep is one example. But I know people who are overworked. They fall asleep like someone hit them with a sledgehammer. Like they lay down, close their eyes, and they're out. But then
Right.
they wake up 3 or 4 times during the night.
Yeah.
That's a sign of that anxiety running in the background. And so just pay attention to that. Or if you are constantly relying on caffeine or to keep you up and going, or alcohol to slow you down at the end of the day, it's all ways that your body is saying, I can't take this much longer.
One of my go-to expressions has always been, buck up and deal with it, Denise. You can get through this. And that was out of necessity, but when you start to realize it's not your lifestyle of where you are now, and we're in no way saying if you're in this place in your life where you have to keep going that, oh, don't worry, just click your heels and it'll be great. But you do have to be aware of, is it worth what I'm doing, or is there another alternative?
Right, exactly. And there always is.
Yeah.
Now, he ends the article by again asking us to challenge the system and beliefs that are keeping us stuck. And he says, yes, it's hard. Yes, it takes courage. But the alternative, burnout, poor health, and addictive patterns, is far harder. When you say, I refuse to conform to a system that disrespects my well being, you lead by example. You show others that success doesn't have to cost your health or happiness. And the result? A life that you don't need to escape from every night with substances and scrolling. That's true success.
And baby steps of just, maybe it's shutting down your computer at 8 o'clock and not turning it back on until you start the day the next day, or as you said, walking without having something, having your phone with you all the time, or not immediately responding to every email. There's little tiny things that you can start to bring back some semblance of balance in your life.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's important to really focus on that, and to just stand up for yourself. There's a lot of stuff that comes with many jobs that aren't included in the job description. Like showing up for certain events after work, or having to go on, I know for like my old job, we had to do like 2 extended education trips a semester.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the school would pay for it and sometimes they wouldn't.
Right.
But it was part of we had to do that. And that meant, finding babysitters, finding the course that had the curriculum hours. You remember all that.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of jobs require stuff outside of the normal of your hours. And I do think it's important to say, yeah, I can't do that right now. And it's not easy, as the article said, but we are more important than that. And our worth and our health and our well-being is more important than that.
You made a very, very important point a few minutes ago. There are always alternatives and choices, even if it may not feel like it at the time. Of, you may need to reach out for help. You may need to do some career counseling. You may need to do something else that will give you more options. And I'm thinking of some folks I know that are fiscally responsible for things in their lives right now and not feeling like they have a choice to do something different. But maybe even going within for a little bit and saying, what do I need to change to take care of myself? Or what else would I maybe want to do, not have to do?
Yeah, exactly. And I think just putting that thought out there leads to opportunities.
Well, isn't that one of the top regrets of the dying of why did I spend so much time working?
Yes. Yes, it is.
And it, so it's a catch-22, but if we're going to spend that much of our lives doing it, we might as well at least try to set some boundaries and enjoy it as much as we can, right?
Yeah. Even I think Barbara Walters said that.
Yeah.
Remember that article where she felt she had some issues, I think, with how she missed out on a lot with her daughter?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so I think even people we've come to rely on and look to and, think, oh my gosh, they have it all. Not necessarily. I love what a woman gave me fantastic advice when I was trying to decide on a career and I was interning at this law firm. And she said, let me tell you something. You can have it all, but you can't have it all at the same time.
Oh,
And
that's good advice.
I thought that was really, really good advice too. And she said, so you've got to decide like this decade will be for my career, this decade will be for my family, that type of thing. But she said, you can't have it all. I'm not saying you can't, but you can't have it all at the same time. And as a, 20-year-old, I really resisted that. You know how optimistic you are then. Like, I can't.
Mm-hmm.
But as I got older, I was like, yeah, I see the truth in that.
And
So I guess the key takeaway, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say that if you have a dream to do something differently, you want to create, you want to write, you want to start a side hustle, you want to take a class to do something that you've always wanted to do in a new career field or just for your own personal development, maybe take one step towards that, because the more you start to do those little things, the more it's going to give you the confidence to realize that you do have the options that you might not feel like you have right now.
Well said. So I think the key takeaway from these two articles is really balance and
Yeah,
self-love and self-care.
right.
And, if we're going to set any resolution for ourselves this year, it should be more self-compassion, more self-love, more self-care.
I think that's a good theme for the year.
Yeah, I do too. All right, next week we'll be back with an article discussion called what? Why your schedule will give you a heart attack. No, I promise we'll be back with something much more enlightening and uplifting. But we thought these articles were just important reminders for empaths who are so focused on helping others, showing up for others, sharing their light, and doing all the beautiful, wonderful things we talk about. But again, there has to be balance, and we have to shine that light on ourselves just as much as we shine it on others. So we hope you all found this as helpful as we did when we discovered them. Thank you guys so much for listening. And remember, as always, to show up, do great work, and share your light and love yourself.
Oh, take care.